You probably know that if you mix yellow and blue together, you get green. That's fine, but how do you mix body paint colors to apply it on your face and getting an even coverage? So in this video, I will teach you about my techniques of mixing colors of body paint. Hello monsters and monster enthusiasts, I'm Monster J Art and welcome to my channel. So in today's video I want to talk about how to mix colors of body paint together. This video will not be about how to find which colors of body paint you need to mix together in order to get a third color, but more about once you know which color you need to mix together, how you actually do it with body paint, and especially how to apply it so that it look kind of even. If you ever did other medium like acrylic painting or oil painting, mixing color is not that really hard. Generally the paint is liquid, it comes in tubes, and you just measure the amount you need to mix together. You generally do it like on a pan or something, and voila, you get your other color. But with body paint, especially with water activated paint, it comes into puck and the makeup is hard. So how then you actually mix it in order to apply it on your skin? So that's what I'll be talking in this video. Before we jump into the subject, just some quick reminders. You can give a like and subscribe to the channel for more cosplay effects makeup tips and tricks, cosplay effects makeup tutorial, or just other art tutorials in general. You can also follow me on Instagram to see pictures of my makeups and my drawings, and you can find the link in the description. So now let's talk about how to mix colors of body paint. So the main thing to consider for deciding which technique to use for mixing colors is what I call the color recipe. Basically, in this video, to keep it simple, we'll consider that we need to mix two colors together, something like this. So the thing that you will need to consider the most is what are the proportion of each color that you need to put in the mix to get your third color. So if the proportion are really similar, something like half and half or 1/3, 2/3, I prefer to mix the water activated paint directly on my skin. If the proportion are quite different, something like 10% and 90% of the other color, then I prefer to mix the color directly in the pan. Also, for some other type of makeup like cream makeup, I will talk quickly about it, but generally I prefer to mix it like in somewhere else, like on a small pan, before applying it on my face. So these are the main thing to consider for choosing which technique to use. Then for all these techniques you can use different tools, but for probably like 99% of the time when I do my makeups, I use brushes. Normally, and I talked about it in some other videos, these are brushes that I get from the art supply store. They are generally for watercolors or mixed mediums, so that's what I'll be using in this video. But you can also mix color with other tools like sponges. Using sponges for mixing color will not necessarily mix the color in the same way, but generally it will give you a little more texture. So it can be really interesting if you're trying to add texture to the mix. So for that I would use sponges, but if I want to get something more even, I prefer to use brushes. So now that being said, let's talk about the body painting mixing techniques. So now I'm back in overview mode in order to do a demonstration of the different techniques of mixing body paint. So the first one will be how to mix the body paint directly on the skin. So as I said, this is a technique that is really good when you have, let's say for this demonstration I will only mix two colors, but if you have ratios like half and half or 2/3, 1/3. So in this demonstration I will do two mixes on the back of my hand. So when a half and half, half and a 2/3 yellow, 1/3 red. The first thing is I always start with the lightest color, generally with colors like white and yellow, and I will always put afterward the darkest colors, such as the darkest being like black and violet. So I will first start by wetting my brush, swirling it in the pan, and I will apply it on my hands. So sorry, my hands are a little more hairy than my face, but it's easier for the demonstration. So I'll start by applying a first layer of yellow with my brush. So this will be the half and half. This will be the 1/3, 2/3, 2/3 yellow. So I apply it. I just want to have an even coverage to cover most of my skin, getting something quite opaque. Then I can, generally when I'm doing my whole face, I will do many different areas so that the body paint have some time to dry. So then I will switch to the other color, so I rinse my brush in water, rub it against the paper towel, and then I can move on to the other color. This one is the Mehron Beach Berry, like a lighter red. So I apply it over my yellow. I will do it for the 2 part. I see that I have, since red is darker, so I don't want to apply more red, so I will remove the excess from my brush, and then I will make sure that the 2 colors get mixed together by just rubbing the brush on top of the body paint like that. So the 2 layers will mix together. So here I want to add another layer of yellow, so I don't want to go directly in the pan. So I rinse my brush again, rub it against the paper towel, then go back, and I will add my second layer of yellow. So sometime here I will have to rinse my brush maybe a little more, since I don't want to contaminate my yellow with too much red body paint. So I apply another layer. Sometimes be careful, because if it's too wet, especially if you're applying other layers, sometimes it will actually remove some of the previous layers that you have applied, so be careful with that. But then I go back, mix the colors together. So you can see the first one I got, it's still more red, but with a slight yellow undertone. I will just put red directly here so that you can make the comparison. So yeah, as you can see, here I get an orange that is slightly lighter than the red. Here I get something that is pretty much closer to an orange. As you can see, this is not necessarily the best. I mean, you can still see that the colors are not 100% uniformly mixed. So I mean, if I prefer to use one puck instead of mixing 2 colors to get a color, you know what I mean? But I mean, if you have to do it, that's a great way of doing it. Pretty much, it's also a similar technique when I want to do gradients. Consider that generally, if you're doing an half and half, it will always go a little more toward the darker color. So if you want truly to have the color in the middle, you will generally have to put a little more of the lightest color. So that's why, as you can see here, if I wanted something closer to orange, so that's why it's better to go with 2/3 of the lightest color and 1/3 of the darkest color. So this is the technique that I use, one of the techniques that I use the most in my makeups. And I think what I like about it is that it's just easier to get the recipe and to have the color more uniform. So now that's being said, let's move to the other technique where you have a bigger contrast with the 2 colors, or where the ratio between your 2 colors are a little more distant. So now I'm back again, and I will show you how to mix 2 colors of body paint in the pan. So here, this is the technique that I use when the contrast between the 2 colors is bigger, and or when the difference of ratio between the 2 colors is bigger. So here I will do I will do two types of green. Basically, I will do like a blue that is with a slight touch of yellow, and yellow with a slight touch of blue. So what I'll do, I still always prefer to start with the lighter color. So I will put like so I will go first in the yellow. I don't want my brush to be too soaked, but still to have enough body paint on it, and I'll swirl it in the blue. So then I mix the two colors in on the brush and I apply it. So that's my blue with a slight touch of yellow. So now I will rinse my brush and do the opposite. But as you can see, now I have a lot of yellow in my blue. So for here, that's not a problem. You can just, you take a paper towel, generally what I do is I put one finger like that, put it in water, and I just clear it. So I swirl my paper towel to remove the yellow that I put it in, and generally I also do it again, but this time I'm not putting the paper towel in the water, so to make sure that it's dry again. So now I'm ready to do the other one. So I will take just a pinch of blue and apply it a little bit in my yellow to get a yellow that is slightly green. As you can see, it's still quite similar in the two cases, but it really depends on the layer. Another thing that you can do is, as you can see, I've put blue once, but I don't have to always go back. Like, I don't have to always go back in the blue before going in yellow. So if I want something a little bit lighter, I can just continue to add more yellow. I mean, this is a technique that I really love, especially when you're doing smaller areas. If you have a large area to cover, the problem with this technique is that you will not necessarily get the same amount of for instance, here, if I apply the dark color in the lightest color, sometimes it's hard to keep the same ratio because you're never really sure on the amount of pigment, of color that you get on your brush. But this technique is really great also when you're doing some shading and when you're doing smaller areas. I think it can be pretty great. Here again, as you can see, the thing that I hate is that you have to clear your pucks of body paint a little bit more pretty much each time where you're changing color. As long as I'm mixing the two colors together, it's not that bad if the two colors get mixed up, but when I'm done trying to do that green, then it's better to wash the two pucks of body paint. So this is the biggest drawback of this technique, is you have to waste a little more of body paint, but I mean, don't be afraid to mix the color of body paint between pan, and as you can see, you can always just wash them afterward. Anyway, I never really talk about it in any of my video, but that technique of cleaning my colors with a paper towel, I always do that with all the colors that I use at the end of each makeup to make sure that they stay clean, true to their color, and also to eliminate like the top layer and maybe the bacteria that can accumulate. So that's one also way to keep your product clean and sanitized. So now I will show you these are the two main techniques, but now I will show you some other technique that I sometimes use as well. So now I will show you a third technique. This is more of an experimental technique that I never actually used in any of my makeup, but I wanted to talk about it anyway. So this is a technique that I first taught when I tried to do my Venom makeup look. The main problem that I had is Venom is really dark in color, but I didn't want it to turn black because I'm on a black background and everything, so I wanted to have a very dark blue, but I hate trying to take from a white puck of Paradise Paint and swirling it in a darker color because white gets contaminated pretty easily. So instead what I came up with is, instead of mixing two colors of water activated paint, I will use liquid makeup and water activated paint, and use the liquid makeup to well activate the water activated paint. So here I'm using the Mehron liquid makeup and the Mehron Paradise Paint. This is the shade dark blue like in the previous example. So I don't want to use my brush and go right in the liquid makeup, especially after going in the blue one, because I will easily contaminate my white liquid makeup, and here I will contaminate the old bottle. I cannot remove it like I did using a paper towel with in the previous example. So instead I will use a dropper like this. So what you can do is you put your dropper in the paint. These are disposable dropper that I get in the store where I buy my paint. Sometimes it's still good to add a little bit of water, and then I can get the same thing mixed in the pan. So you can see I get a blue that is slightly lighter. I should have, if you want, then I can also just add more white body paint, but it's a way of adding white in the pan more easily. I have to say, what I like about this technique is that it still get a little more creamy. So I feel that the consistency that I apply is a little more opaque, a little more thick, a little more creamy. So it is a very interesting technique. The problem, the main reason why I don't use it that much is because I don't want to, I already have a lot of color with the Mehron Paradise Paint. I don't want to purchase all of these color back with the liquid form. So that's why I only have the white for the liquid makeup, but it is another technique that can be pretty interesting. Especially, as I said, if you use white to lighter up a color, this can be very interesting. So now that's pretty much all of the main technique that I use to mix two colors together. There is some other type of technique that I use for gradients with water activated makeup, but that will be the topic of another video. I still want to show you one technique. This is how I mix cream makeup. So I'll just wash my hand, wash my product, and I will come back with this last technique. So for the last technique, I will show you how I mix colors of cream makeup. Here instead I will use the Makeup Forever Flash palette. This is the main product of cream makeup that I use in my makeups. I especially use it pretty much in all of my makeup on top of my lips or on top of my eyelids as kind of a primer, but I prefer this one because this is eye safe, which is not the case with all of the water activated makeup. So that being said, how I do it is, instead of mixing it in the pans or directly on my skin, I instead use a transitory place, a kind of mixing palette. So I got the palette and the brush from a previous Anastasia Beverly Hills lip palette, and it came with this brush that have a little I don't know how to call that but basically something to collect the cream makeup, to put it on the plane, and then you use the brush to mix it. So this technique, the reason why I do this instead of putting it directly on my face is because I can adjust the color on the palette before I applying it on my skin. So here I will mix these two colors. I will try to get like a violet. So I will start with a bit of pink. I apply it, then I take a paper towel, I clean my brush, I just rub the cream makeup away from it, then I'll add a pinch of blue. I will mix them together. So you can see I get a violet, a kind of fuchsia, which is quite nice. But here let's say, oh, I want it to be, I think it's a little too dark. So instead what I can do is I can also just come here and take a little bit of white, add it to the mix, So it gets a little bit lighter. Now I get something that is a little more purple, and then once I'm happy with the color, I can just apply it on the skin. So yeah, it's just that it is true that with cream makeup, I think it is a little bit easier to get the color you want and then to adjust with the different colors that you have. But yeah, it's something that you can do with cream makeup, but I cannot really do with water activated makeup. So yeah, this is how I do it, and at the end, obviously you just have to wash your brush between each color. Here I will have, generally I will wash the plate pretty much the same way I will wash my brush under the water using shampoo or some other kind of soap, maybe sometimes dish soap, to remove all of the makeup from it. But when I'm pretty done before washing it, I will try to remove most of it using a paper towel like this. So yeah, this is the main way I will mix colors of cream makeup, and generally when it's time to set it, you can set it using a powder, but I really like to set it with eyeshadows that match the color that I want to reach. Sometimes also you can do slight correction depending on the type of eyeshadows that you use to set your cream makeup. Sometimes also you can get some different finishes, like obviously the cream here, most of my color are mattes. So, but if I want to, let's say here I got my fuchsia, but I can set it with a purple metallic eyeshadow to get a metallic finish. So that's another thing that you can do to add a little more pop or more depth to your colors with cream makeup. Obviously you can also add eyeshadows on top of water activated makeup, but since you have to set your cream makeup, I prefer to set it with eyeshadows. So do you have any other question on how to mix colors of body paint? If so, leave it in the comments down below. And now I'm back with makeup on. So I did a cosplay SFX makeup of Roy Koopa from the Super Mario universe. So yeah, these are the main technique that I use in pretty much all of my makeups in order to mix colors together. I have to admit that I always prefer to get a color of body paint that is already the closest to the color that I want, instead of trying to mix different color to get that color. But I mean, especially if you start and you're a budget, this is a great option. But yeah, I use pretty much these techniques also when I want to get gradients or when I want to make shading and stuff. I will maybe talk more in another video about particular techniques on how to do shading, but it's basically really similar to these one about mixing colors. So I hope you really enjoyed the video. If so, please feel free to give a like and subscribe to the channel for more Cosplay SFX makeup tips and tricks, Cosplay SFX makeup tutorial, and videos about art tips in general. So I hope to see you in another video. Bye!